"What in the blazes are you doing here, old man? This isn't a museum tour, it's a secure facility, and you're holding up the works." The words, sharp and laced with an impatience that bordered on outright contempt, sliced through the sterile air of the command center's entrance. Lance Corporal Jenkins, barely 2 years out of basic training and radiating an almost comical aura of self-importance in his crisp, unblemished uniform, glared down at the figure before him. The old man, as Jenkins so dismissively labeled him, was a janitor, clad in faded gray overalls, his movements slow and deliberate. He clutched a worn bucket and a bristly mop, its handle a familiar extension of his age-gnarled hands. His face, a roadmap of wrinkles etched by decades of sun and sorrow, remained impassive. His eyes, though, held a depth that Jenkins, in his youthful arrogance, utterly failed to perceive, a quiet ocean of experiences that could drown the superficiality of the younger man's world. The janitor, known only as John to the few who bothered to acknowledge his presence, had been meticulously cleaning a scuff mark near a biometric scanner, a task he approached with the same precise dedication he applied to every inch of the sprawling military installation. He didn't look up, merely continued to scrub, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor running through his aged frame. Jenkins sighed, dramatically tapping his foot. "Did you hear me?" I said. "What are you doing?" "Move it. General Peterson is due any minute, and he doesn't appreciate clutter, especially human clutter, blocking the entrance to his command center." The contempt was palpable, a thinly veiled insult delivered with the smug satisfaction of petty authority. John finally straightened, his back creaking audibly. He turned slowly, his gaze finally meeting Jenkins's. There was no anger, no resentment, only a profound weariness that seemed to absorb the younger man's scorn without recoil. He simply gestured with a mittened hand towards the now gleaming patch of floor. His voice, when it came, was a raspy whisper, thick with the gravel of time. "Just ensuring the path is clear, son." "A clear path is a safe path," Jenkins scoffed, a sneer twisting his features. "Clear path? You think polishing a speck of dirt is ensuring a clear path for a general? You're a janitor, not a forward observer. Your job is to clean, not to philosophize. Now get out of the way before I write you up for insubordination." The threat hung in the air, heavy and demeaning. John merely nodded, a flicker of something unreadable in his ancient eyes, and slowly, painstakingly, began to push his mop cart towards the service elevator. He moved like a shadow, easily overlooked, a ghost in the gleaming corridors of power he silently maintained. Jenkins watched him go, a triumphant smirk playing on his lips, utterly oblivious to the history that was slowly, patiently retreating from his presence. The tension in the air was a living thing, thick with the unspoken contempt of the young guard for the old janitor. Jenkins, still flushed with the minor victory of asserting his authority, continued to preen, occasionally glancing at the retreating figure of John with a dismissive shake of his head. "Some people just don't understand the chain of command," he muttered to a passing colleague, loud enough for John to potentially overhear. The colleague, a private first class named Miller, a quiet woman with an uncanny knack for observation, merely offered a tight-lipped smile, her gaze lingering on John's back. Miller had noticed things about John, the way he held himself even when stooped, a certain dignity in his every deliberate movement, the almost ritualistic care he took with the facility's flag, ensuring it was folded with a precision that spoke of deep respect. The faint, almost invisible scars that crisscrossed his hands, telling tales of a life far removed from scrubbing floors. She had also noticed the tattoo on his neck, half hidden by the collar of his uniform, a faded, intricate design that seemed to pulse with a silent story. As John slowly maneuvered his cart, the sleeve of his overall rode up, revealing a glimpse of something else, a small, almost unnoticeable pin affixed to the inside of his tattered shirt, a muted silver gleam against the gray fabric. It was a detail Miller filed away, a small piece in a puzzle she didn't yet realize she was solving. Suddenly, the distant thrum of an approaching motor grew louder, echoing through the polished halls. Jenkins snapped to attention, his posture rigid, all traces of his previous arrogance replaced by a practiced deference. "General Peterson," he barked into his comms, a clear indication of the impending arrival. The heavy double doors of the command center's entrance hissed open, revealing a flurry of activity. Two black sedans, highly armored, glided silently to a halt. The lead vehicle's door opened and out stepped General Michael Peterson, a man whose very presence commanded respect. His uniform, adorned with a dazzling array of ribbons and medals, spoke of a lifetime of distinguished service. Beside him, a stern-faced, impeccably dressed woman in a dark suit emerged, Deputy Secretary of Defense Eleanor Vance. The air crackled with anticipation, the weight of their authority pressing down on every soul present. As the General and Deputy Secretary began their brisk walk towards the command center, their retinue of aides and security personnel fanning out around them, John the janitor was still several yards away, slowly making his way towards the service elevator. His presence, so inconsequential moments before, now felt like a misplaced piece of furniture in a meticulously arranged room. Jenkins, suddenly remembering John, shot a furious glance at the old man. "Move it, John!" "Now," he hissed, his voice strained with a desperate urgency. "Out of sight." The urgency in Jenkins's whisper was raw, bordering on panic. He knew the general's reputation for punctuality and precision, and the thought of an elderly janitor inadvertently obstructing his path filled Jenkins with dread. John, however, continued his deliberate pace, seemingly oblivious or perhaps simply incapable of accelerating his movements. The mop cart, a clanking, cumbersome contraption, became a symbol of his perceived inadequacy, a tangible representation of the clutter Jenkins had earlier lamented. General Peterson, a man whose gaze was trained to absorb every detail of his surroundings, whether in a briefing room or on a battlefield, noticed the brief, agitated exchange. His sharp blue eyes, accustomed to scanning horizons for threats, subtly shifted from the gleaming floor to the old man in gray. He registered Jenkins's barely suppressed frustration, the janitor's serene composure, and the quiet dignity of the slow, methodical pace. Deputy Secretary Vance, equally astute, followed the general's gaze. Her expression, usually unreadable, softened almost imperceptibly as she observed John. There was something about the way he held his head, the set of his jaw, that resonated with a distant memory, a faint echo of a past she couldn't immediately place. As they drew closer, General Peterson's eyes fell upon the janitor's neck. The collar of John's faded gray overall had shifted slightly, just enough to reveal a portion of the intricate faded tattoo Miller had noticed. It was a winged dagger entwined with a scroll bearing an ancient, almost forgotten Latin phrase, per mare, per terram, per diem, per noctem. For a fraction of a second, the general's brisk stride faltered. His gaze sharpened, a flicker of something profound and deeply personal igniting in his eyes. He stopped dead, his entire retinue halting with him, creating a sudden, unexpected silence in the bustling corridor. The sudden cessation of movement, the abrupt halt of one of the most powerful men in the military, sent a ripple of confusion through the assembled personnel. Jenkins, caught off guard, froze mid-whisper, his face a mask of bewildered alarm. He braced himself for a reprimand, assuming the general was about to scold him for the janitor's lingering presence. But General Peterson wasn't looking at Jenkins. His gaze was fixed, unblinking, on John's neck. He took a single, deliberate step forward, his voice, usually booming with authority, now hushed with an almost reverent incredulity. Excuse me, old-timer, the general said, his words cutting through the tense silence. May I see your neck more clearly? John, who had been about to disappear into the service elevator, paused. He turned, his eyes still distant, now held a hint of curiosity. Slowly, almost reluctantly, he lowered his chin, allowing the collar of his overall to fall away completely, fully revealing the faded tattoo. The winged dagger, the scroll, the Latin phrase, they were all there, stark against the weathered canvas of his skin. A collective gasp, soft yet discernible, rippled through the assembled officers and security personnel. Lance Corporal Jenkins, his jaw agape, felt a cold dread creep up his spine. The general's eyes, fixed on the tattoo, were wide with a mixture of disbelief and profound recognition. "Good God!" General Peterson breathed, the words barely audible, a profound reverence in his tone. He reached out a hand, not to touch, but to point with a trembling finger. That's the insignia of the Black Griffins, the 1st Special Operations Detachment Alpha, and the motto, "By sea, by land, by day, by night." There's only one man I know, only one legend, who bore that tattoo and lived to tell the tale. He looked up, his gaze meeting John's, no longer seeing a mere janitor, but something far more. "John, is it? John, Captain John Ghost Caldwell?" The name, spoken with such hushed awe by a 4-star general, struck Jenkins like a physical blow. The Black Griffins, the 1st Special Operations Detachment Alpha. These weren't just names. They were whispered legends in the hallowed halls of military history. A unit so elite, so clandestine, that most believed it to be a myth. And Ghost Caldwell, his name was synonymous with impossible missions, with a combat record so extraordinary it bordered on fiction, a man rumored to have single-handedly turned the tide of conflicts. John, the humble janitor, finally smiled, a slow, gentle unfolding of his wrinkled face that transformed him entirely. The weariness in his eyes was replaced by a familiar glint, a spark of the old warrior. "It's been a while, General," he rasped, his voice gaining a surprising depth, a quiet strength that had been hidden beneath years of silence. "But yes, John Caldwell, at your service." General Peterson didn't hesitate. He snapped to attention, executing a crisp, perfect salute, his eyes brimming with respect. "Sir," he declared, his voice ringing out, shattering the stunned silence. Deputy Secretary Vance, equally stunned, mirrored the general's salute, her face a mixture of shock and dawning admiration. The entire retinue, from colonels to security detail, followed suit, a wave of salutes sweeping through the corridor. Jenkins, paralyzed, watched in horror as the reality of his monumental error crashed down upon him. He had demeaned, insulted, and threatened a living legend, a man whose shadow he was not worthy to stand in. He, a mere lance corporal, had treated Captain John Ghost Caldwell, a hero of impossible renown, as human clutter. The weight of his insolence was crushing. John, still holding his mop, simply nodded, a humble acknowledgement of the profound respect being shown to him. He then returned a salute, slow and deliberate, but imbued with a power that transcended rank and time. The sheer, devastating irony of the situation was almost unbearable. The sudden, unexpected revelation, the thunderclap of recognition that reverberated through the sterile corridor, sent a shockwave through everyone present. General Peterson, still holding his salute, his eyes fixed on Captain Caldwell, was visibly moved. His voice, when he spoke again, was thick with emotion, tinged with a solemn reverence. "Captain Caldwell, sir, it is an honor, a profound honor, to stand in your presence. The story, the legends of Ghost Caldwell are still taught in our Special Forces academies. Your tactics, your courage, your sheer audacity in the face of impossible odds, they are etched into the very fabric of our military history." Deputy Secretary Vance stepped forward, her initial shock now replaced by a quiet awe. "Captain Caldwell," she began, her voice soft, "I remember reading the classified reports. The ghost of Quang Tri, they called you. The rescue of Ambassador Davies from the heart of enemy territory. A mission deemed suicidal by every intelligence agency. You single-handedly turned the tide of that entire operation." John, the janitor who had been dismissed as old man moments before, now stood as the undisputed center of attention, a beacon of living history. He lowered his hand from his salute, a gentle, almost embarrassed smile touching his lips. "Just doing my job, ma'am. Same as anyone else." His humility was as profound as his past valor, further solidifying the respect he commanded. Jenkins, meanwhile, felt the blood drain from his face, leaving him a sickly shade of white. His carefully constructed world of petty authority had crumbled around him, exposing him as a callow, ignorant fool. The contempt he had so freely dispensed now coiled back, a venomous serpent constricting his own chest. He had verbally assaulted a man who held a place of honor among legends, a man General Peterson revered as Sir. The magnitude of his disrespect was unfathomable. General Peterson finally lowered his salute, but his posture remained one of profound respect. He turned, his gaze sweeping over the assembled personnel before finally settling on Lance Corporal Jenkins, who was now visibly trembling. The general's expression hardened, every trace of his earlier reverence replaced by a cold, steely command. "Lance Corporal Jenkins," he stated, his voice now a low, dangerous rumble that promised swift and decisive consequences. "You will address Captain Caldwell with the respect his service and rank demand. Your behavior this morning was a disgrace to this uniform, to this institution, and to the very principles of military honor. Captain Caldwell may no longer be on active duty, but his rank, his sacrifice, and his legacy are eternal. You have shown a profound lack of discipline, a stunning ignorance of history, and an unforgivable disrespect for a decorated war hero." The silence that followed General Peterson's scathing rebuke was absolute, broken only by the distant hum of the facility's ventilation system. Jenkins stood rigid, his eyes fixed on some point beyond the general's shoulder, unable to meet the burning gaze of his superior. He swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry, the taste of ash in his mouth. Deputy Secretary Vance stepped forward, her voice cutting through the heavy air with a quiet authority that was no less impactful than the general's fury. "Lance Corporal," she began, her tone measured but firm, "the military is built on a foundation of respect. Respect for rank, for experience, and for the sacrifices made by those who came before us. You demonstrated none of that. You represent the face of this facility, and your actions reflect on every soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine who serves. Your conduct today was unacceptable." She paused, allowing her words to sink in, each one a hammer blow to Jenkins's rapidly disintegrating confidence. "General," she continued, turning to Peterson, "I believe Lance Corporal Jenkins requires a significant re-education on the meaning of military bearing and respect." General Peterson nodded, his gaze still fixed on Jenkins. "Indeed, ma'am." "Lance Corporal Jenkins, report to my office immediately, and bring your gear. You'll be spending the next month on latrine duty, minimum, under the direct supervision of Master Sergeant Anya Sharma. I assure you, she will disabuse you of any notions of misplaced authority and entitlement." The punishment, though seemingly mundane, was a profound humiliation for Jenkins, a direct and public stripping of his perceived status. To be reduced to the lowest of duties, under the watchful eye of one of the military's most notoriously strict non-commissioned officers, was a fate far worse than a simple reprimand. John, Captain Caldwell, watched the exchange with an almost detached interest. When Peterson finally turned to him, his expression softened once more. "Captain, I am truly sorry you had to endure such disrespect on our watch." John simply waved a hand, a faint smile on his lips. "Youthful indiscretion, General. We've all been there, haven't we? Learning takes time, and sometimes a little humility." His words, rather than condemning Jenkins further, actually offered a quiet defense, a testament to his own profound character. This unexpected act of grace only deepened the general's admiration. "Even in this, Captain, you show us the way," Peterson murmured. "Is there anything at all we can do for you, sir? A proper position, a place of honor, anything you desire." John's eyes, deep and knowing, met the general's. He shook his head gently. "No, General. I'm content. The quiet, it suits me. This place, these halls, they need to be kept clean, you know. It's a different kind of service, but service nonetheless, and it allows me to think." He glanced around the gleaming command center, his gaze lingering on the various screens displaying real-time intelligence, the bustling personnel, the quiet hum of advanced technology. "A clear path," he reiterated, a faint echo of his earlier words, "is a safe path, both for the floor and for the minds that walk upon it." His simple statement, imbued with the wisdom of a lifetime of observation and silent contemplation, resonated deeply with both Peterson and Vance. It was a profound truth delivered without fanfare, a lesson in humility and purpose that transcended rank and station. General Peterson, despite his initial offer, understood. He recognized the quiet strength in John's refusal, the fierce independence of a man who had earned the right to choose his own path, even if that path led him to a mop and bucket. "Understood, Captain," Peterson said, a renewed respect in his tone. "However, I insist on one thing. From this day forward, you are to be addressed as Captain Caldwell by everyone on this installation, and your work here is vital. Consider yourself an integral part of the command structure, one who ensures the optimal operating environment for our most sensitive operations." He winked, a rare display of levity from the stoic general. "And perhaps, Captain, you might grace us with your presence at our next command briefing? Your insights, I imagine, would be invaluable." John's smile widened, a genuine warmth spreading across his weathered face. "Perhaps, General, perhaps." The following days saw a dramatic shift in the atmosphere surrounding Captain Caldwell. The once invisible janitor was now treated with a reverence that bordered on awe. Every service member, from the lowest private to the highest-ranking officer, offered a respectful nod, a whispered "Captain Caldwell," or even a crisp salute as he went about his duties. The mess hall, once a place where he ate alone in a quiet corner, now often found him sharing a table with junior officers who listened, spellbound, to the occasional understated anecdotes he chose to share, tales of ingenuity and courage that made their training manuals seem like children's stories. The legendary Ghost Caldwell, once a myth, was now a living presence, a tangible link to a heroic past. Lance Corporal Jenkins, meanwhile, having completed his arduous re-education under Master Sergeant Sharma, emerged a fundamentally changed man. He no longer viewed his uniform as a symbol of personal power, but as a mantle of responsibility. He performed his duties with a newfound diligence, his interactions with others marked by a quiet respect he had once so carelessly dismissed. He often sought out Captain Caldwell not for absolution, but for guidance, listening intently to the old man's observations, learning from a lifetime of quiet wisdom. One crisp autumn morning, a year after the dramatic reveal, Jenkins found Captain Caldwell standing by the flagpole, meticulously ensuring the rope was untangled, his gaze fixed on the rising sun. Jenkins approached, a thermos of freshly brewed coffee in his hand. Good morning, Captain Caldwell, sir, he said, offering the thermos. Thought you might appreciate this? John turned, a warm smile gracing his face. Thank you, son. That's mighty thoughtful. He accepted the coffee, taking a slow, appreciative sip. Beautiful morning, isn't it? Good day for a clear path. Jenkins nodded, his gaze following John's to the horizon. It is, sir. And thanks to you, I understand what a clear path truly means, in more ways than one. John simply hummed, a knowing twinkle in his eyes. We all have our paths, son. Some are grand, some are humble. But every path, if walked with honor and purpose, leads to something worthwhile. Just remember that. He clapped Jenkins lightly on the shoulder, a gesture of genuine camaraderie. Now, go on. Duty calls. And remember, look closer. Always look closer. As Jenkins walked away, a sense of peace settling over him. He understood that the true lesson was not just about respecting rank or past glory, but about seeing the inherent dignity and potential wisdom in every human being, regardless of their outward appearance or perceived status. He had learned to look beyond the surface, to recognize the depth that often lay hidden beneath the mundane. And as the sun fully rose, casting its golden light over the military installation, the quiet figure of Captain John Ghost Caldwell stood, a silent guardian, a living legend, a profound testament to the enduring power of humility, service, and the unwavering spirit of a true hero. His story, a beacon of forgotten valor and rediscovered purpose, resonated far beyond the walls of the command center, a timeless narrative of human dignity.